Hello there, I have returned. I'm sorry that there was no video yesterday because I went out yesterday for a while. And I made bread, so I was kind of tired. Anyways, if I'm correct, this should be the start of World War II, if I remember correctly. Let me just double check. Okay, so I believe I called it like the War of Continental Dominance or something stupid like that. Okay, so the end of the video. Yep, the War of Continental Dominance. So this is starting World War II. Also, tomorrow there'll be a birthday stream, if I remember correctly, which I probably will. So yeah, look out for that, because tomorrow there'll be a birthday stream. Anyways, let's just begin this. And I'm also actually going to turn on this layer just for a sec. Okay, first thing we see is we just see these, like, we see the Baltic League, Poland, and Ukraine just completely just decimate these three. Okay, so we see the Baltic League invades into the north, capturing this northern area. Poland begins invading into these guys. Ukraine, being the only nation with a decent border of both of the two, begins invading into both. Managing to capture the eastern section of here. And capturing an area of Belarus. And then eventually, Belarus ends up falling quite quickly. And then up here, the Polish use their new front line to make a spearhead, eventually cutting these guys off to where they end up surrendering. And then they end up surrendering to the Polish, Belarusi, no, the Polish, Baltics, and Ukrainians. Then the next bit of movement is here, where troops already are. I see. Actually, I'm just gonna... Okay, yeah, that's better. Actually, no. Okay, that's better. So we see them invade into here. Then we just... like, a lot of troops are lined up on these borders, so... yeah. The French almost, well, not almost instantly, but like quickly lose this city, and eventually a quick like just invasion leads to these guys. However, they do invade. They do enter into their northern ally. Some even choosing to surrender, and a few, like a very small minority, choose to like actually join the Romans, like a small minority, and that leads to this area falling. Then we see various naval landings happen. One over here, which is also where a bit of like a land thing is, but they don't have that much of a military over here. Anyways, there's a landing here. a landing here, and then an invasion throughout here. Then they begin invading into the Britannics, I'm not sure what to call them. Anyway, they begin invading into the Northern French, and like, they're like a top 10 power, I believe I put them. If not, they're probably a top 10 power now. But like, they aren't like deathly strong. Anyways, after a while, we see like they just remember that these guys, like, they're on the opposing side, so we see their troops go east and like no west, and like this isn't even pretty. Like, these guys are like a lot weaker than the Romans. Spain basically just gets divided, and Portugal like quickly loses their capital. Eventually, the rest of Spain falls over to the Romans, and certain communities, like certain regions, surrender over to the Romans, and certain ones surrender over to these guys. Did I just hear some outside? 6, 7. Yep, this generation's doomed. Anyway, so I got sidetracked. Anyways, we see troops from Morocco not only go up here, but they also go east. Because we see the Iberians invade into this area. Like, it doesn't do too much, but it does something. Eventually they like take the deserts, I guess. Like, sure, it's a desert, but like, yeah, it's that much a desert. Anyways, the Romans choose to go for the more important areas up here. And with the French or like Norman troops like distracted down here, they managed to take this northern section and eventually cut off all contact. And eventually a rebellion happens. And eventually a new government is made here. The Romans don't care, as they still invade in, and eventually they take all of the colony. Now these guys, horrified, but they're on good terms with the Romans, so they probably won't die. Anyways, we see troops go north now, as we see them begin. Let me actually get the colour first. Okay. As we see them begin entering into like Danish territories. Eventually they take some. And eventually spearhead is made during the sea, severing this area in two. Obviously, like, they can like go back and forth, but like a large amount of troops go here. They have like naval superiority through like the strait, so like, well, I'm not sure if it's a strait, but like throughout this little area, so like contact is cut and then they get murdered. Eventually the Danish eventually get pushed back just up to Denmark. And eventually a ceasefire is signed between these two. Anyways, we see the Baltic League. Why did I sound so... Anyways, Baltic League, they managed to capture these two islands. And eventually, with the help of the Finnish, they managed to claim this area as their own. Wait, what? Finland's on their team? Again, I forgot. Okay, that one. This area goes over to the Baltics. The Baltic League. Basically the Baltic region. And then the rest ends up falling over to these guys. A landing is made, and that ends up... Well, it takes over, like, this section. Oh, it takes over this section, and then a rebellion happens, which ends up claiming the rest. Yes, I'm reusing the same colour. But, like... This is, like, the most heavily fortified area in the world. Like, this is a very fortified island. So, like, no one's ever gonna get past. Anyways, up here in the British Isles, this is the one area where the Hexagon team isn't completely failing. A landing is made in Scotland, and eventually the capital is taken. The city is taken, and there's nothing left. A naval landing is made on this island from Iceland, and then the rest just ends up falling. They then set their sights down in the southern. As they, yes, I'm using a darker colour. As they begin marching down, eventually capturing here. Also, if you're wondering why like these three aren't doing anything, like they just can't be able to like actually send. And if you're wondering why these, oh, already the French are. Well, the French have to deal with this, so yeah. Anyways, eventually this eastern area gets taken, and then the north gets taken, and eventually the rest falls. And then there were two. The French and the French. Now, this is, as some other nations can see, this will split the continent between, at most, 7 nations. Ukraine, Poland, the Baltic League, the Romans, the Irish, the Danish, and Thrace. So we see some nations try to change that. One nation where, even if it won't completely knock them out the war, it will at least give time to help the others. The gold team joins in on the Hexagon Alliance. It doesn't do too much. Oh, I forgot to get rid of the capitals. Wait. Okay. Not sure why they're still there. Anyways. The Romans begin invading. And like, this goes pretty quick. They end up falling. However, it does cause some time for some pushback, such as down here. And a surprisingly large amount of pushback up here. Hell, it even like manages to like have them push into Denmark a bit. But all good things must come to an end, as these guys eventually get fully pushed out and their armies exhausted begin slowly but surely giving up. First, these two cities give up. Then, these three cities give up. Then, the British claims they don't surrender. They choose to join Ireland. Then, all of Amsterdam chooses to surrender. And finally, Brittany and Normandy, they choose to surrender. Eventually, the continent will be coloured in purple, and these two can't do anything to change it. And in the next episode, which is Wicso 26, I believe, I haven't even count, let me just double check. Yep, no, 27, sorry. We will see a peace treaty. Goodbye.